House of Shadows. In a remote corner of Great Britain, far from civilization, stands an abandoned house, surrounded by a dark forest. Over the years, it has become a place of legends that continue to scare the locals. But not everyone has heard these tales. Eliza, a young woman from London, had no idea why her sister had suddenly disappeared several years ago, leaving only a mysterious note behind. In this note, sent in her last letter, she asked Eliza to find her and help stop something that could no longer be undone. "You must discover the truth, or we will all be in danger. Find the house. It's there." This letter becomes Eliza's only clue. She embarks on a journey, filled with curiosity and a sense of impending threat. And after several days of travel, she reaches the house, standing on the border between the real world and the dark abyss that surrounds it. The house appeared abandoned, yet it seemed that the old walls guarded secrets that should never have seen the light of day. The windows were boarded up, the doors broken, but inside there was no feeling of emptiness, only something alive, something invisible that watched her. Eliza felt her heart race as she crossed the threshold of the house. At first, everything seemed normal. But after a few minutes, she encountered the children who lived there. They looked normal, even pleasant, but their eyes. There was something off about them. Jackson, one of the children, immediately claimed he could see the future, while another, Eliza, a 9-year-old girl with enormous gray eyes, could read minds. And then there was Thomas, who could summon ghosts. "Your sister," Jackson began, but then fell silent. "She was here, she lived with us. And everything was fine, until..." Eliza asked why everything had gone wrong. And then the children told their story. It turned out that this house, built many years ago, was once a residence for a group of scientists studying paranormal phenomena. And while most of their experiments never left the walls of this house, some discoveries became too dangerous. Those experiments, particularly those involving powerful energy fields, led to the appearance of terrifying entities from parallel dimensions. The children, although they had tried to survive, became part of these experiments. Some were born with abilities, while others gained them under the influence of strange rituals conducted in the house's underground chambers. And now, with no one left to stop them, these entities began to break into the real world. The first night in the house was terrifying. Shadows on the walls started to move, appearing and disappearing, and strange noises echoed from the basement. The children said they often heard voices belonging to dark forces, waiting for the moment they could fully enter this world. However, with each passing day, the situation grew worse. Strange changes began to happen among the children. Thomas, who could only summon ghosts before, started to control them, and Jackson, who predicted the future, became vulnerable to manipulation by entities from another dimension. Eliza began to notice that the more she learned about this house, the stronger its power consumed her. She felt her body growing weaker, and her mind gradually losing control. The shadows began to speak to her, whispering her name. "You know what you want," they say, their voices like a dull echo. They stirred her doubts, making her think that her sister had long since become part of this terrifying world. That night, when Eliza finally ventured into the basement, she found her sister's diary. And from its pages, the horrifying truth was revealed. When her sister was younger, she became part of the experiments conducted at this place. Her task was to uncover the secrets of dark energy, but it led to her being controlled by unknown forces. Eliza understood. Her sister had not disappeared. She had been consumed by these shadows, and she herself had become part of what now haunted her. Each day, the house grew worse. The shadows gained strength. The children could no longer control their abilities. They had fallen under the influence of the dark force. And then, when everything seemed hopeless, Eliza found a record in the diary that could become their last chance. It was a ritual that could close the portal between worlds. But it required a great sacrifice. In the final climactic moment, when dark entities were crawling out of every crack and the space around them began to collapse, Eliza and the children decided to perform the ritual. And though the cost was terrible, they managed to close the portal. But this did not bring them freedom. The children who survived lost their abilities, and the house was destroyed. Eliza, leaving the island, knew that the dark force would never leave her in peace. The shadows of the house would remain with her forever. And even if she tried to forget, they would remind her of what happened and of those who never managed to escape the grip of darkness. Several months had passed since Eliza left the island. She returned to London, trying to rebuild her life. But every step, every new day, seemed more hazy and indistinct. She couldn't shake the feeling that something invisible and unseen was following her, that the dark shadow from the island was tracking her every move. All the days spent in the house and the things she experienced there remained deeply etched in her soul. They weren't just memories. They were scars left from her encounter with the unseen world. At night, she often heard faint sounds from outside her window. Soft knocks, whispers, like the rustling of skin against stone. She tried to convince herself that it was just a product of her imagination, memories of the house, of what had happened there. But every sound felt like a chain pulling her back, reminding her that she couldn't escape the dark force. Since the ritual had been completed, the portal was closed, but what was on the other side hadn't disappeared. It couldn't. It was part of the very foundation of reality, something that could never be fully erased. And this knowledge wouldn't leave her. On one cold January evening, when a fierce storm hit London, Eliza received a new letter. It was anonymous, without an address, only one word written by hand: "You were wrong." The letter was written on old paper, covered in dark stains that resembled blood. Fear quickly gripped her, but she opened it nonetheless. "The remnants of your sister are still alive. She has crossed from the other world, but not completely. She is looking for you. You must return to where it all began. If you don't, it will find you." Eliza shuddered. She had already thought that it was all over. She didn't believe in the supernatural. She had convinced herself she had left that nightmare behind, but this letter changed everything. The shadows hadn't let her go. Thoughts of her sister, her fate, and what might have happened to her haunted Eliza. She realized that perhaps she was only a part of a larger game that had started long before she arrived on the island. Maybe her sister wasn't just a victim, but part of a plan, and now she was someone's messenger. Eliza had no choice. She set off back to the island, but this time with some knowledge of what awaited her. This time she was ready. Or was she? She wasn't sure. When she reached the house again, everything looked the same as before. The forest still surrounded the house, as if it had absorbed all time, unchanged since the moment she first set foot on its threshold. But in reality, this was an illusion. The house didn't stand in time. It was a boundary where reality and dark energy intertwined. It was the source, the gateway to something larger. And anyone who stepped into it became part of that flow. Eliza felt this as she entered. And though the house seemed empty, she could feel the dark energy enveloping her, as though someone was watching her every move. All the children were gone, replaced by new, unfamiliar faces, their eyes burning with a dark light. But among them was one person she recognized. Before her stood her sister. She looked the same as she had when she left the house. But now her eyes were empty, and something in her gaze was different. She wasn't alive. She was part of this other world, which was seeping into reality, and now she was trying to claim Eliza. "You must stay, Eliza. We have all become part of this." "You cannot leave," her sister said, her voice distorted, torn between worlds. The dark entities, which had once only whispered in the shadows, were now a reality. They emerged from every corner, from every crack, and were now trying to engulf everything around them. Eliza understood that she had to act fast. Recalling the entry in her sister's diary, she remembered the ritual that could stop it for a while, though at a high cost. She knew it wouldn't stop everything permanently, but at least she could buy some time. Eliza began to invoke the same energy that had once closed the portal. But this time, she wasn't alone. All the children who had lived in the house had become part of the ritual, helping her, even though they had already become part of the dark entities. The ritual ended. The house trembled, the walls resonated, and the space around them began to shift. White beams of light began to pour from the walls, and it was then that she saw it. Her sister disintegrated, her form shattered into pieces and vanished. But before everything around her disappeared, Eliza realized this world and this house would never be the same again. The shadows had left their mark, and they would never vanish. They were only waiting for the moment to return. Eliza left the island and returned once again. She left, knowing that even though she had escaped this nightmare, it would stay with her for the rest of her life. She heard it in every gust of wind, in every step she took in the dark. The remnants of the shadows, always following her, would never let her be at peace. And no matter how hard she tried to forget, in this world, there was a dark part waiting for its time. Eliza returned to London, but the feeling that dark forces were still following her never disappeared. Every time she walked through the streets of the city, she caught herself thinking that someone or something was watching her. She was no longer the innocent person she once was. She had endured what she had been through, but her life, like her soul, remained damaged. Nightmares became part of her daily reality. They were so real that Eliza would wake up in a cold sweat, feeling the dark shadows still walking through her room. Sometimes, she thought she could hear her sister's whisper, calling her back to the house. Sometimes, dark phantoms would appear in her dreams again, immortal, waiting for her return. But what troubled Eliza the most was that in London, with all its noise and the distance from the island where it all began, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was another world. And although the ritual had closed the portal, she felt that this world somehow remained with her, penetrating every moment of her life. Eliza began to feel that she was becoming part of something larger, even if she wasn't ready to accept it. Her ability to see things others didn't notice was growing stronger. She started to realize that her experience wasn't random, that she was part of something ancient and dark, that her sister was just one of many souls trapped in this nightmare. One evening, when another storm hit London, Eliza received a new call. It was quiet, almost inaudible. But when she picked up the receiver, all she heard was incomprehensible static. She didn't know what the sounds were, but they reminded her of the voices from her nightmares. At that moment, the phone went dead, and one word appeared on the screen: "They have come." It was the same text she had seen on the letter before returning to the house on the island. And now this word had become a signal for her. She understood that her experiences weren't over. The forces she had encountered were not just part of her life, they were part of her destiny. She returned to the island, but this time she was ready for anything. All her memories of those terrifying nights came rushing back, and she knew that she needed to find the final answer, something that would not only close this dark chapter of her life, but also, perhaps, free her siblings who had stayed there, in this world of shadows. But this time, nothing on the island felt familiar. Everything was silent. Every step she took through the empty corridors seemed amplified by the echo of something dark. The children who had once lived in the house did not appear. And the house itself seemed to have become part of another dimension, not entirely here, but not quite there either. Eliza lowered her hands, preparing for the fact that she would have to relive this nightmare again. She was ready to face her sister once more, but this time with a different goal: to free her from her prison, to stop this invisible evil once and for all. She couldn't be dragged into this endless cycle any longer. Walking through the same corridors as before, she reached the basement. This was where it all began, where the rituals had taken place, where the source of the evil lay. She remembered her sister's diary again. At that moment, her gaze stopped on a large stone slab in the floor. It was the same slab that had closed the entrance to the dark world. The slab was being moved by some invisible force. Eliza fell to her knees before the slab, feeling her body fill with both warmth and cold at the same time. She knew that there was only one way to stop this nightmare. She had to accept her place in this world, understand that her fate was tied to this dark force, and only then could the endless cycle be stopped. She placed her hands on the slab and spoke aloud the words from her sister's diary. It was a new ritual, another way to free the people who had become part of this world, without allowing the dark forces to enter reality again. As soon as her words were spoken, she felt the ground beneath her feet begin to tremble, and the dark entities hiding in the corners began to approach. But this time, it was her moment, her fight. She was ready to close this portal once and for all. After everything calmed down and the shadows disappeared, Eliza returned to London, confident that she was no longer part of this world. She knew that the dark forces couldn't return, but deep down, she was left with one question. Was it really over? Was there something else, Something she hadn't seen that might come again? The dark scars on her heart remained. And though she had fled from this world, one thing remained unchanged. The world of shadows always follows those who have touched it.